Some minds do not rush to speak. They linger. They listen to the echo beneath words. The silence between moments. Deep thinkers move through the world quietly, carrying entire universes inside them. While others skim the surface of experience, they sink into memories, meanings, patterns no one else notices. Their pauses are often mistaken for distance, their silence for absence. But inside, something constant is unfolding, a slow dialogue between emotion and thought. This is not a story about intelligence. It is about depth and the unseen psychological weight of thinking too deeply. There is often no moment when it is announced, no clear beginning, only a gradual awareness that the inner world feels heavier, richer, and more crowded than the outer one. Deep thinkers usually recognize themselves in silence, in the pause before answering a question, in the way a single sentence can linger for hours, replaying itself with different meanings each time. While others move on, the mind stays behind, tracing emotional fingerprints left by ordinary moments. A look held too long, a tone that shifted slightly, a story that did not end cleanly. This recognition rarely feels empowering at first. It feels isolating. There is a quiet sense of being out of sync with the pace of the world. Conversations seem to skim across the surface, while something inside longs to go deeper. Small talk feels exhausting, not because of arrogance, but because it lacks substance. The mind is not seeking stimulation, it's seeking resonance. Often, deep thinkers are labeled early: too quiet, too sensitive, too serious, too lost in thought. These words do not arrive as diagnoses, but as subtle suggestions that something about them is excessive. And slowly, without realizing it, they begin to watch themselves. They learn to pause before speaking, to edit thoughts before sharing them, to compress complexity into simpler shapes so others can understand. Recognition also comes through emotional intensity. Deep thinkers feel reactions fully before they can name them. Sadness does not arrive alone, it brings memories, associations, meanings. Joy does the same. Emotions echo, they overlap. They ask to be understood, not ignored. This depth of feeling can feel confusing, especially in environments that reward emotional efficiency rather than emotional presence. Many discover their depth in solitude. Late nights, long walks, quiet rooms where thoughts finally have space to stretch. In these moments, the mind becomes a companion rather than a burden. Questions arise, not urgent, but persistent. About people, about meaning, about why certain moments leave permanent impressions while others disappear. There is often a subtle grief tied to this recognition. The realization that the world does not always meet depth with patience. That speed is valued more than reflection. That silence is misunderstood. Deep thinkers begin to sense that they will often carry more than they can easily share. Yet this recognition is also the beginning of self-awareness, a quiet understanding that the inner landscape operates differently, that the mind is not broken, only tuned to a different frequency. It listens longer, it feels further, it notices what others overlook. This chapter is not about labels, it is about that first soft realization. The moment someone begins to understand that their mind does not rush because it is not meant to. It lingers because depth is where it lives. Depth does not appear suddenly. It is shaped slowly, often without permission. For many deep thinkers, the roots trace back to early environments where observation became safer than expression. Childhoods where emotions were unpredictable. Homes where silence carried more meaning than words. Or spaces where understanding others became a form of quiet protection. In these settings, attention sharpened. The mind learned to read between lines, to anticipate moods, to sense emotional shifts before they were spoken aloud. This is not always the result of trauma. Sometimes it is simply solitude. Being an only child, feeling older than one's age, growing up surrounded by adults rather than peers. Depth forms when a mind spends time alone with itself before it learns how to leave. When imagination becomes company. When thinking becomes both refuge and responsibility. Early emotional maturity often plays a role. Deep thinkers are frequently the ones who listened rather than spoke. who noticed what was unsaid, who learned to hold space for others' feelings before fully understanding their own. Over time, this attentiveness turns inward. The same awareness once used to understand the room becomes a tool for examining the self. Curiosity also contributes, not the loud kind that demands answers, but the quiet kind that sits with questions. Why people act the way they do. Why certain moments feel heavier than others. Why some words linger long after they are spoken. This curiosity is not driven by productivity, it is driven by meaning. Depth can also form in response to emotional absence. When understanding is not readily available from others, the mind turns inward to create it. Feelings are analyzed instead of shared. Thoughts are processed internally because there is no external mirror to reflect them back. Over time, this internal processing becomes habitual, automatic, almost invisible. Cultural and social factors shape this as well. In environments that discourage emotional expression, depth becomes hidden. Thinking replaces speaking. Reflection replaces reaction. The inner world expands while the outer one remains controlled. What begins as adaptation slowly becomes identity. It is important to understand that deep thinkers are not born withdrawn. They are shaped by context, by what felt safe, by what was rewarded, by what was necessary. Depth is often a response to complexity, not a preference for isolation, but a learned way of navigating a world that felt emotionally intricate or uncertain. There is no single origin story. Some arrive at depth through sensitivity, others through responsibility, others through quiet loneliness that taught them how to keep themselves company, but the pattern remains the same. The mind learns early that attention is power, and understanding is safety. This chapter is not about blame. It is about origins, about recognizing that deep thinking is not a flaw to correct, but a history to understand. It began as a way to survive, to adapt, to make sense of things that could not be simplified. Depth, in this way, is not chosen. It is inherited from experience. A deep thinking mind is not loud. It is persistent. From a psychological perspective, deep thinkers often show heightened activity in regions associated with self-reflection, emotional processing, and pattern recognition. The brain does not simply register experiences, it replays them. It searches for meaning, context, connection. Thoughts do not arrive as single points. They arrive as networks. This is why the mind rarely feels quiet. Even in stillness, there is movement. Memories surface without invitation. Conversations replay with alternative interpretations. Emotions are examined from multiple angles, not to create distress, but to understand. The mind is not chasing certainty, is tracing coherence. Deep thinkers often process information more slowly, but more thoroughly. Where others move on quickly, their minds linger, examining subtle inconsistencies, tone shifts, micro-expressions, emotional undercurrents. This heightened sensitivity is linked to stronger neural responses to both internal and external stimuli. What feels neutral to others may feel significant here. Emotion and cognition are deeply intertwined. Feelings are not experienced in isolation, they trigger analysis. Why did that moment feel heavy? Why did that silence linger? Why did a small disappointment feel larger than expected? These questions arise automatically, not as conscious choices. Psychology refers to this as depth of processing. Information is encoded with more associations, more emotional tags. This creates richness, but also mental fatigue, because when everything is processed deeply, nothing is easily dismissed. The mind carries more than it releases. Rumination is often misunderstood as negativity, but for deep thinkers, it is frequently an attempt at integration. The mind revisits experiences not to suffer, but to organize, to place them within a narrative that makes sense. Unfortunately, not all experiences resolve cleanly, and unresolved meaning keeps the mind awake. There is also a strong internal dialogue. Thoughts respond to each other. Perspectives debate quietly. One part feels, another analyzes, another observes the analysis itself. This layered thinking can create insight, but it can also create distance from the present moment. Rest becomes difficult, not because of anxiety alone, but because the mind does not easily disengage. Silence becomes an invitation for thought, rather than relief from it. Even joy can trigger reflection why it happened, whether it will last. What it says about the future. This chapter is not meant to pathologize depth. The same mechanisms that cause overthinking also enable empathy, creativity, and profound understanding. The mind that never rests is also the mind that notices patterns others miss, that senses emotional truth beneath language, that connects ideas across time. But understanding the psychology matters, because without it, deep thinkers often blame themselves for mental exhaustion, believing they should be able to turn it off. In reality, the mind is doing exactly what it was trained to do. It is not broken. It is thorough. Depth creates a quiet contradiction. Deep thinkers often crave connection, yet feel most at ease alone. They long to be understood, yet hesitate to explain themselves. Their minds reach outward while their instincts pull inward. This tension is not indecision, it is the result of holding too much awareness at once. Social interaction can feel simultaneously meaningful and draining. Conversations are absorbed fully. Emotions are mirrored unconsciously. Unspoken dynamics are noticed and carried long after the interaction ends. What others release easily, deep thinkers continue to process. This can create a subtle resistance to closeness, not because of disinterest, but because intimacy requires energy they must carefully manage. There is also the conflict between authenticity and adaptation. Deep thinkers sense quickly when their natural rhythm does not match the environment. Faster conversations, simplified emotions, surface-level engagement. To belong, they often compress themselves. They shorten thoughts, soften intensity, offer only fragments of what they actually feel. This self-editing protects them from misunderstanding, but it also creates quiet loneliness. Internally, another struggle unfolds. The desire to trust one's own perceptions versus the fear of being too much. When depth has been questioned or dismissed in the past, self-doubt settles in. Thoughts are second-guessed. Emotions are analyzed, not only for meaning, but for legitimacy. Is this reaction valid or excessive? Is this insight accurate or overthinking? This inner monitoring consumes mental space. Instead of simply feeling, the mind evaluates the feeling. Instead of speaking, it rehearses consequences. Over time, this can lead to emotional fatigue, not from feeling deeply, but from constantly filtering that depth. Resistance also appears in moments of stillness. The mind wants clarity, but clarity requires sitting with uncertainty. Some questions have no immediate answers. Some emotions cannot be resolved quickly. The deep thinker's urge to understand clashes with the reality that not everything yields meaning on demand. There is often guilt attached to withdrawal. Stepping back to recover feels necessary, yet it can be misinterpreted as distance. This reinforces the belief that depth is inconvenient, not only to oneself, but to others. And so the cycle continues: engagement, overload, retreat, self-questioning. This chapter is not about weakness. It is about friction. The friction between a deep internal world and an external world that rarely slows down to meet it. Between sensitivity and self-protection. Between longing and restraint. Deep thinkers are not conflicted because they lack clarity. They are conflicted because they see too much at once. At some point, often quietly, something shifts. It is not a dramatic breakthrough. There is no sudden confidence or declaration. It is a subtle loosening, a moment when the constant self-questioning grows tired of itself, when the mind, after years of analysis, begins to recognize a pattern not in the world, but in how it has treated itself. The realization begins with permission, not granted by others, but felt internally. The understanding that depth has never been the problem. That the exhaustion did not come from thinking deeply, but from resisting it, from trying to move at a pace that was never natural, from measuring inner complexity against external simplicity. Deep thinkers often arrive at this realization through contrast, meeting someone who listens without rushing, reading words that feel eerily familiar, experiencing silence that does not demand explanation. In these moments, there is recognition without justification, a sense of being seen without having to translate oneself. This turning point reframes the past. Sensitivity is no longer viewed as fragility, but as awareness. Overthinking becomes contextualized not as failure, but as a mind seeking coherence in a complex emotional landscape. The quiet withdrawal is understood not as avoidance, but as regulation. Psychologically, this is the moment when self-observation softens into self-acceptance. The mind still analyzes, but it no longer turns its sharpest edge inward. Emotions are allowed to exist without immediate correction. Thoughts are witnessed without being interrogated. There is grief here too. Grief for the years spent believing something was wrong, for the energy used for the depth that was hidden to survive, but the grief is gentle. It does not accuse. It simply acknowledges. The realization also introduces a new form of responsibility not to change, but to honor one's internal rhythm, to stop demanding immediacy from a mind built for contemplation, to recognize that clarity often arrives slowly, and that this slowness is not a flaw. This chapter is not about empowerment in the conventional sense. It is about relief. The relief of no longer needing to explain one's depth to oneself or to others. Of understanding that a quiet mind does not mean an empty one, and a silent presence does not mean disengagement. For deep thinkers, this realization does not end complexity. It ends the war against it. Living with depth does not mean resolving it. It means making space for it without resistance. After the realization, something subtle changes in how the inner world is held. Thoughts still arrive in layers, emotions still carry weight, but there is less urgency to fix them, explain them, or turn them into something else. Depth becomes a landscape rather than a problem, a place to move within, not escape from. Deep thinkers begin to notice how much energy was once spent bracing against their own minds. Now, that energy softens. Silence is no longer something to defend. Solitude is no longer framed as withdrawal, but as restoration. Time alone is recognized as a necessary condition for emotional balance, not a sign of disconnection. There is also a quiet recalibration of boundaries, not in a dramatic way, but through subtle choices. Fewer explanations offered to those who do not listen. Less urgency to be understood by everyone. Depth learns discernment. Not every thought needs a witness. Not every emotion needs translation. Psychologically, integration looks like regulation. The mind still reflects, but it learns when to rest. Not because it is forced to, but because it feels safe enough to pause. Emotional waves are allowed to rise and fall without immediate analysis. Some experiences are felt fully before being interpreted. They are interpreted at all. Connection changes. Deep thinkers begin to recognize the difference between loneliness and misalignment. They sense when an environment requires too much compression, too much simplification, and they begin, quietly, to choose spaces that allow them to remain whole. This does not make life easier in the conventional sense. The world does not suddenly slow down. Misunderstanding still happens, but the internal response shifts. Depth is no longer carried defensively. It is carried with steadiness. There is also a growing respect for limits. Mental fatigue is acknowledged without shame. Emotional overload is recognized earlier. Rest is not earned, it is allowed. This is not self-care as performance. It is self-awareness as preservation. Living with depth means accepting that some days will feel heavier than others, that certain moments will linger longer than expected. That clarity may come late, but when it does, it comes fully formed. It means trusting the timing of understanding. This chapter is not about mastery. It is about coexistence. The deep thinker does not outgrow their nature. They grow into it, slowly, quietly, without announcement. Depth does not need to be solved. It needs to be lived with. Depth does not ask for applause. It does not demand recognition. It simply exists, like a river carving its path through stone. Unseen, yet unyielding. In the life of a deep thinker, moments of quiet observation become sacred. The subtle shifts in another's expression, the weight of a fleeting memory. The rhythm of thoughts as they circle and return, all are noted, held, felt. There is a beauty in this attentiveness, a richness that escapes those who move too quickly to notice. Poetically, depth is a companion, sometimes heavy, sometimes luminous. It travels silently alongside the mind. It teaches patience, not through instruction, but by circumstance. It teaches empathy, not by desire, but by necessity. It transforms ordinary experience into layered reflection, turning fleeting moments into lasting resonance. There is also a quiet generosity in deep thinking. Even when misunderstood, the deep thinker observes, listens, and senses. They carry understanding without expectation. They feel without demanding reciprocation. In a world that often prizes speed, they offer presence. And yet, there is a humility inherent in this depth. It does not need to be explained. It does not need to be justified. Its worth is intrinsic. The deep thinker learns, slowly, that their richness is not measured by external approval, but by the capacity to inhabit complexity without collapsing under it. In these final reflections, one can see that deep thinking is not a burden, nor a flaw, nor a secret to hide. It is a rhythm of mind and heart, a quiet attunement to the subtleties of life. It is the inner universe that observes the outer one, and in doing so, transforms even ordinary existence into something remarkable, if unseen. So, the story ends not with answers, but with presence. Not with perfection, but with understanding. Not with resolution, but with a gentle acknowledgement that to think deeply is to witness fully. The deep thinker's path is silent, yet it leaves impressions far beyond the reach of words. Depth is not a condition to overcome, it is a life to inhabit.